Well, joining me in the studio is Nitasha Kaul. She's an associate professor in politics and international relations at the University of Westminster. Many thanks to you for joining us. I mean, you can see why this is a pretty dreadful practice, isn't it? Indian women able to find themselves instantly divorced from Muslim men simply by uttering this word 3 times. I've read of instances where it's done on Skype or even on WhatsApp. It's been hailed as a historic decision. Is it? How important is it?
I think that it is without doubt that it is a decision that is going to be welcomed and is being welcomed by anybody who's progressive and concerned about women's empowerment. However, we have to bear in mind the wider context, which is, one, that this kind of talaq has a very low incidence in the first place. So a survey earlier this year found that it accounted for 0.3% of divorces, of Muslim divorces. But more importantly is the wider context within which this declaring of it as unconstitutional is happening, which is a selective targeting of the regressive practices of Indian minorities in an environment where right-wing majoritarian Hindutva is ever gaining ground. So similar kinds of regressive practices within the mainstream community are not likely to be targeted in the same way, although they should be. So there are several other practices in other religions, including in Hinduism, where the women have to be given away at marriage by men, they cannot light the funeral pyres, and so on and so forth. So one would hope that this would be applied across the board, this kind of move towards women's empowerment and equality and removing of obstacles, rather than being used to create an Islam versus gender binary and paint a particular minority religion is regressive.
It's part of this sort of clash between the judiciary and religions in the country.
Yes.
My understanding is that Prime Minister Modi wants a sort of commonly codified law, bringing all these practices under one law. Is he going to succeed, or by what you're saying, it doesn't sound like that is really what it's about?
Well, part of, you see, the Uniform Civil Code, which is the idea that everybody would be treated in the same way, should be a uniform civil code. However, there are worries at the moment that it might turn out to be a uniform Hindu civil code. There's a long tradition in India of using religion as a way of gaining electoral advantage, so communalizing issues in politics. In the 1980s, there was a famous case called Shah Bano case, where when the then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, under that government, a progressive judgment that allowed an elderly Muslim woman to claim alimony from her ex-husband was overturned in order to what was called appease the minorities. And now a similar kind of use of the judiciary and of the political domain is being made to consolidate a Hindu majority agenda. So it's the wider context within which the minorities find themselves being forced to chant nationalist slogans, lynched, for fear of having consumed beef or carrying beef. So in that environment, the celebration of a judgment like this by women and by progressives and by Muslim women is good, but the celebration of it by rather patriarchal and misogynist right-wing Hindu brigade beggars belief, because, this is not, women's empowerment is not the core of what they are about.
Nevertheless, a small step on what is a very long road towards women's empowerment in
Absolutely.
India.
And there's a long history of women's activism in South Asia that has been struggling against this, and we should not take away from that, from that context. And I hope that, for the diaspora as well, these kinds of issues would be taken more seriously. The UK government this year earlier launched a consultation on outlawing caste discrimination explicitly. And that is a move that is being opposed by members of the Hindu community in the UK by saying that this is an interference with our culture. So my view would be that anything that is actually regressive, regardless of which community, majority, minority, which part of the world, should be dealt with constitutionally, judicially, but also at the level of the community. And this judgment is good. But I think that one would hope that this paves the way for the targeting of regressive practices in all religions, and that it is certainly something that is worthy of being celebrated by progressives in general, and women in particular.
Dr. Nitasha Kaul, we'll have to leave it there. Many thanks for your time.